With the temperatures heating up, many of you load up your jet skis, motorcycles, and campers, but you may need to keep it cool while pulling those heavy loads. And our auto guy, Brian Bowersock, is here with more on transmission coolers. Now, Brian, I have to say, I never really had heard of a transmission cooler before today.
Most people don't know a whole lot about them. I mean, it's something that people don't normally think about.
Does it come with your car, or is it something that you do always have to add?
Well, initially, cars all have a transmission cooler. They're usually built into the radiator.
Okay.
They're a very small cooler, so they cool the transmission to the temperature of the cooling system on the engine. Unfortunately, what we'd like to do is keep the transmission a lot cooler. The cooler we can keep the transmission, the longer we can extend the life on it. Because the two worst things for a transmission are contamination from dirty fluid and overheating of the transmission.
So I'm just going to hold one of these up so they can take a look at what it's like. Now, if you have a big truck or something and you are going to be regularly carrying a boat or something, do you need to go ahead and upgrade and get one of the bigger ones just right from the get-go?
It's a really good idea. Once again, like I said, the cooler you can keep it. And you can see here, there's one size. I mean, these vary. And this isn't the biggest you can get either.
Okay.
I just picked a couple here to bring along with us. And this is one of the few things on a vehicle that the bigger, the better. The more cooling surface you have, then obviously the cooler you can keep the fluid. And we like to keep transmission fluid, if possible, down around 170 degrees. Unfortunately, there's no engine that runs 170 degrees.
Okay.
There's two different ways you can actually hook these up to a vehicle, and that is basically either running it through the original cooler, then out, and then through this and back to the transmission, or we just disconnect the original cooler, run it just through this.
Is this something people can do themselves? So if you're a at-home kind of auto
well,
guy?
a lot of times it takes a couple hours to do. You have to disassemble the grill, and you want to put it in a spot that gets the most fresh airflow before it goes through the radiator so that it's not heated up air. So usually we install these in the very front of the car, and we want to get the biggest one in possible. Like I said, the more surface, obviously, the cooler we can keep the transmission fluid.
Now, who are people who need these bigger ones? Is it people who every single weekend are taking the boat out to the lake or something like that?
Whatever vehicle we have, the more space you have, the bigger we usually recommend to go.
Oh, so even if you're not doing a lot of heavy pulling.
Because there's no overkill on this. The cooler you can keep the fluid, the better off you are, the better it is for the transmission itself.
Okay.
So usually we look at it, and you just put in the big. Obviously, a Geo Metro, you're not going to fit this big cooler under the hood. It's almost as big as the motor. So, you know, there's certain limitations. But, you know, whatever properly fits, the largest we can fit in there is usually the best recommended.
And one thing you were pointing out earlier that I thought was interesting is that it does impact the fluid. So if the fluid gets hot.
A transmission that runs typically overheating on a regular basis, which a driver would never know of, let's say it runs at 230 to 270 all the time, will start to bake the fluid, and you end up with a black, smelly fluid from that. And actually what happens is that causes valves to varnish in the transmission, and then you end up with a transmission problem down the road after extended overheating. And obviously replacing a transmission is quite expensive compared to putting a cooler on a vehicle.
Yeah, so it goes from this red color here all the way up to this black yucky stuff.
Actually darker than that, correct.
Wow. And so how much, I mean, I know it varies from car to car, but
they vary installed anywhere from $200 to $450, around in there, depending on the size of the cooler, how much work it is to install it on that vehicle.
All right, so easier to do a little preventive maintenance one more time than it is to try to replace it.
Way, way cheaper than replacing the transmission, absolutely.
All right, thanks so much for being here with us and all that good advice again. If you'd like if you have a question for Brian, just log on to our website at fox6.com. We've got a link there so you can ask him directly, or we'll ask him on the air and get it back out to you.